This video is going to be so controversial. I'm sure the only reason you're watching it is because you saw the title. That was quite provocative. You're probably thinking to yourself, why on earth would anybody marry a married person? You can't even do that. Well, that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. My message today is to do something that too many people are doing. Do not ever, ever marry a married person. Okay, what do I mean? I recently found out there's this young girl at my church, and I just love this young lady, and I saw her posts on Facebook when she got engaged, and I was so happy for her. And then I found out later that her wedding date is set to be married in the church, yet her fiance's annulment hasn't gone through yet. Well, first of all, I'm thinking to myself, what on earth? Why is that priest even allowing a date to be set? Because the man she's choosing to marry is a married man. Yes, he's divorced. So let's talk. Again, I am going to be so judged and so slammed by this video, but I no longer care, because if I find that one soul is saved because of something I say, if one of you tells me you're going to step out of a relationship and a marriage you're about to enter because you understand the truth of what I'm about to say, then I'll be grateful, I'll be so happy, and I'll be praising God, and God will be happy. But here's the thing. The young man she's hoping to marry has already been married. He's gotten a civil divorce. They are both Catholics. But he's not had an annulment. So let's start with what the Catholic Church teaches. Technically, you are not even allowed to get a divorce until you go for an annulment. And the annulment is not a thing that ends a marriage. I know that our Catholic annulment system has been scandalized. I'm the first to admit it. Way too many annulments are being approved. And what an annulment says is that this marriage never existed. A marriage never existed. So it's not like you even need a legal divorce in the eyes of God. You aren't married. And in the past, maybe 2% of those people who applied for nullity of marriage, who sought to see if a marriage existed, only 2% were approved. But because the annulment system in the church has just been infiltrated, and I'm not even going to get into that in this video, I'll do another one. The annulments in America are approved at 90% of all the world's annulments come from America. So there's a problem. Putting that aside, the annulment is determined to say if a marriage ever existed. So in this case, this man that she is marrying doesn't even have an annulment. He is married to his first and only wife. Too many people enter into what we call second marriages, and it's not even valid in God's eyes. So let me just say this. So many people say, well, I can't get married in the church for my second marriage. The church won't let me. It's the church's rules. The church isn't making rules. The church is following what Christ said. And in the Gospels, Christ talked about the indissolubility of marriage. In his preaching, this is from the Catechism of the Catholic Church, in his preaching, Jesus unequivocally taught the original meaning of the union of man and woman as the Creator willed it from the beginning. He said permission by Moses to divorce. By Moses. Jesus didn't say God gave him permission when Moses asked. He said when Moses granted permission to divorce one's wife, it was a concession to the hardness of their hearts. But never once in that exchange did Jesus say, and he was okay, so we allowed it. Jesus goes on. It says the matrimonial union of man and woman is indissoluble. The matrimonial union of man and woman is indissoluble. God himself, God, not the Catholic Church, God himself has determined that what therefore God has joined together, let no man put asunder. I could read more. So with too many of us, you guys, I'm not judging you. I don't care if you think that I'm judging you. I'm not. If you think I'm judging you, that's on you. A second marriage. So the church is trying to protect you and saying, I can't let you marry in the Catholic Church. You're already married. It is impossible for this man in this example to marry another woman when his first and only wife, his covenant wife, is still alive. Yet so many of us look at that civil divorce and think, oh, it's gone, let's do it again. Do you know how many of us are exchanging partners out there? Well, I used to love you, but I don't love you. I'm divorcing you. I'm marrying this one. But this one was married to someone else, and someone else divorced them, and they don't like him anymore. So I'm going to go marry this person. Everyone's remarrying, picking new partners. And our country, our world, has so many of us living in a perpetual state of adultery. And our friends and family no longer look to the truth of the gospel to stand by and say, I can't allow it. I talk so much about infidelity, but we don't even understand. Just going to someone's fake second marriage is against God. And we do it every day. I mean, above and beyond the risk that this young woman is taking, what if the church comes back? Well, they don't come back in time for your wedding date that's already planned and set in the church and for your spouse, fiance's annulment. Worse yet, what if when they do come back, they say, no, and we're not approving it. He's in a valid marriage. So she's essentially marrying a married man. I'll go past all the ecclesial things. One day I'm going to do one just on the indissolubility of marriage. But for today, I really wanted to talk further about some of the reasons why you shouldn't marry a married person. Because step families, it creates a whole new level. And so many people say to me, you say out loud the things that we're thinking. Everyone who's gotten into this great second marriages, I would love to parent your children. I'll love them as much as I love my own. And in some cases that happens. But in most cases, it's his kids and her kids. And you don't tell my kids what to do, and I don't tell your kids what to do. And when we try to tell each other's kids what to do, it doesn't work out well. And the collateral damage, guys, is the kids themselves. Those children want mom and dad back together. And you might say, well, not my kids. They were happy when my dad left, or when my husband left, or when my wife left. Well, if I was there questioning, much of the time when I talk to kids, they're like, well, I can't see my mom and dad ever together. I'm like, that's not what we're talking about. Is if mom and dad learned how to be happy, if mom and dad learned how to communicate, wouldn't you want them together? Absolutely. There's so many difficulties with children who are forced to live with dad and his new girlfriend, who he calls a wife, or mom and her new sex partner, who she calls a husband. Why create this extra layer of problems? So many of you are saying, okay, let's just say you guys buy into what I'm saying, which you should, because you have to face God. And let's say you say, well, there's so few people out there that have never been married before, or who've been married and their spouse died, so they're widowers, they're free to marry. And I implore you to say, use the virtue of temperance. Wait until the Lord brings you that person. Sure, it might be slimmer pickings because many of the people out there right now have already been in and are still in a legally marriage bound by heaven. Because remember, only if you can be unbaptized can you be unmarried. And I haven't found anybody that can be unbaptized. Satanists have ceremonies where they try to unbaptize themselves. Did you know that? Can't. That's the same thing that happens on your wedding day. You're stepping into a minefield where now this young lady is going to have to try and mother this man's children, and their mother already exists. And I'm not saying she can't, love them. She's a sweet young girl. I love her whole family. But our goal, you and me, people around, is to help that husband reconcile with his one and only wife. For his sake, for the sake of his children, for the sake of the kingdom, for the sake of his soul and his wife's soul. Marriage is hard enough. The conflicts we're going to have, the difficulties we're going to experience, who knows? Who knows? Maybe your spouse will end up with schizophrenia, bipolar, have a car accident, go bankrupt, have a porn addiction, alcohol problems. There's so many things you're going to have to deal with in marriage. This is the nature of marriage. Why add another layer onto it spiritually and physically? And just because there are many people who now accept it, I am old enough at 58 to remember how traumatizing it was when I was a kid. Oh, so-and-so's going to have a second marriage. They knew. Nothing's changed, you guys. The only thing that's changed is we as a society have become immune to it. We no longer even see it as a sin. We no longer see living together, sleeping together outside of marriage as a sin. But it is. And you know what we're using as the judge of our sin? People's opinions. Well, everybody else is doing it, so it's okay. I am trying to save your marriage before it happens. I have a friend who waited until she was nearly 50, and she used to ask God all the time, I just want a husband. But I'll be patient, and I'm not going to rush into a marriage until you send me the man that's intended for me. And yes, she had men who were divorced, but God wanted her, like you, in a valid marriage. He wanted her in a marriage with her covenant spouse. You guys, don't marry a married person. Set your standards higher. Set your standards on God's standards. Yeah, you can fall in love with that person. And you can think how awesome they are. And I'm sure they are. But they have flaws too, or their spouses wouldn't let them get. They're always going to say it was the other person's fault. Always going to say, well, my wife was a nutcase. Whatever. He wasn't perfect either. And you're about to find out. Because I've also had those people come to me years later and say, oh, now I know what his wife meant when she said, or his ex-wife. There are no exes in heaven. You're married or you're not. The day you make that decision, even if you wished you could get out of it, you can't until the Lord calls one of you home. So I know it was controversial to hear. I'm trying to protect you from the fake second marriage. I'm trying to create for you an environment to where we can go back and marry covenant spouses and have this bond blessed by God. And then have our children. Then bless our societies. And then fight for a marriage with one less layer of difficulty. Do it for God. Do it for the children, do it for society, but do it for your soul. Because now that you've seen this video, when you answer to God on your judgment day, and he says, you knew it was a sin to marry that man who's divorced, i.e. married in my eyes, and you chose to do it anyway. How are you going to answer that? It's not easy to do. I'm not saying anything I'm saying is easy. But I am saying I'm trying to save you. Let's do things God's ways, not our ways. All right? Praying for you, asking God to bless you with discernment, wisdom, strength, courage. And I'd be obliged if you'd pray for those things for me as well. Look forward to seeing you on our next video. If you're having trouble with this, give me a call. I'm Dr. Christine Bacon, and this is Breakfast with Bacon.